What's the real price of something you don't actually need? Why do so many lottery winners lose money, not through bad luck, but through ownership itself? Have you noticed how buying something is often the cheapest part of the decision? Maintenance, legality, relevance, and responsibility tend to arrive later, quietly, persistently, and without refunds. And if money removes limits too quickly, how many purchases are actually decisions, and how many are just reactions with receipts? Stay with us, because these winners didn't waste money by spending it. They wasted it by keeping what they bought. Today, we're opening the file on 50 of the dumbest things lottery winners spent their money on. Not because the items were expensive, rare, or luxurious, but because owning them quietly destroyed value instead of creating it. These purchases didn't fail at checkout. They failed afterward, when maintenance, legality, irrelevance, and responsibility began accumulating faster than satisfaction. In most cases, the mistake wasn't buying something extravagant. It was misunderstanding what ownership actually demands once the novelty wears off. Fasten your seatbelts, because the most expensive part of these purchases wasn't the price tag. It was everything that came after. 1. The private island that needed a government. A lottery winner purchased a small private island, imagining isolation, freedom, and a permanent escape from normal constraints. The decision ignored that islands require infrastructure, power, fresh water, waste management, permits, and staff, none of which disappear just because ownership changes hands. Maintenance costs, environmental regulations, and emergency logistics quickly exceeded the purchase price, turning paradise into an administrative project. They didn't buy solitude, they bought responsibility without an off switch. 2. The super yacht that never left the dock. A winner acquired a luxury super yacht believing it represented mobility, status, and limitless leisure. What followed were docking fees, crew salaries, insurance, fuel, and regulatory compliance that accumulated whether the yacht sailed or not. Usage declined as costs rose, and selling proved difficult due to market saturation and depreciation. The yacht wasn't a vehicle. It was a stationary expense with prestige branding. 3. The exotic animal collection. Flush with money and novelty-seeking energy, a lottery winner purchased exotic animals legally through licensed sellers. What wasn't considered were veterinary care, specialized enclosures, permits, and ongoing ethical scrutiny. Local authorities intervened after compliance failures, and relocation costs eclipsed initial purchase prices. They didn't buy animals. They adopted permanent obligations with legal consequences. 4. The custom mansion no one wanted. A winner commissioned a massive custom-built mansion tailored precisely to personal taste and lifestyle fantasies. The design prioritized uniqueness over resale practicality, making the property appealing to almost no one else. Maintenance, staffing, and utilities ballooned while market value stagnated. Customization created comfort, but destroyed liquidity. 5. The rare supercar that couldn't be driven. A lottery winner bought an ultra-rare supercar expecting performance and exclusivity. Specialized maintenance, limited parts availability, and restrictive usage conditions made regular driving impractical. The car spent most of its life in storage, while costs continued accumulating. They didn't buy speed, they bought preservation anxiety. If there's a pattern emerging, it's this. Purchase is only the entry fee. The real cost shows up later, in upkeep, legality, and relevance. These items didn't fail because they were luxurious. They failed because ownership demands consistency long after excitement fades. And as the next examples show, the more unusual the purchase, the faster novelty turns into obligation. 6. The military tank for personal use. A lottery winner purchased a decommissioned military tank, attracted by its symbolism of power and indestructibility rather than any practical use. The reality quickly set in. Transportation permits, storage requirements, demilitarization rules, and constant mechanical upkeep turned the novelty into a legal puzzle. The vehicle couldn't be driven legally on public roads and attracted regulatory scrutiny wherever it was stored. They didn't buy strength. They bought an immovable conversation with authorities. 7. The private jet without a destination. A winner acquired a small private jet, assuming freedom from commercial travel schedules and delays. What followed were pilot salaries, hangar fees, insurance, inspections, and flight hour minimums that continued regardless of actual use. Without regular travel needs, the aircraft depreciated rapidly while expenses remained fixed. The jet offered flexibility, but demanded commitment first. 8. The gold-plated everything phase. Flush with cash, a lottery winner began gold-plating everyday household items to signal luxury and uniqueness. The process added cost without adding durability, function, or resale value, while making replacements impractical. Maintenance became expensive, and the novelty faded quickly. They didn't invest in quality, they invested in a finish. 9. The home theme park. A winner built a small amusement park on private property, complete with custom rides and attractions for personal enjoyment. Safety regulations, insurance, inspections, and staffing turned a private fantasy into a regulated enterprise. Operating costs dwarfed enjoyment, and resale value proved negligible. They didn't buy fun, they built liability. 10. The fleet of identical supercars. One winner purchased multiple copies of the same high-end supercar, assuming rarity would multiply value. The market disagreed, treating the cars as depreciating assets regardless of quantity. Storage, maintenance, and insurance costs stacked without adding liquidity. Abundance didn't create scarcity, it erased it. At this point, it becomes clear that money doesn't just buy objects, it assigns them a job. When a purchase has no real purpose beyond novelty or ego, the object still demands care, space, and attention. And as the next set shows, when responsibility scales faster than meaning, ownership stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like obligation on autopilot. 11. The life-size statue of themselves. A lottery winner commissioned a life-size statue of themselves, believing it would symbolize achievement and permanence rather than excess. The sculpture required custom materials, specialized artists, and ongoing preservation to prevent damage or decay. Friends found it uncomfortable, visitors mocked it quietly, and resale value was non-existent. They didn't buy legacy, they bought a permanent joke that couldn't be returned. 12. The personalized jewelry collection. Flush with sudden wealth, a winner ordered custom jewelry engraved with names, dates, and symbols meant to mark personal milestones. The designs reflected highly specific taste, limiting appeal beyond the original owner. Insurance, storage, and security costs quickly surpassed enjoyment. They didn't buy investment pieces, they bought memories locked into metal. 13. The mansion built for appearances. A lottery winner constructed a sprawling mansion designed primarily to impress guests rather than support daily life. Rooms went unused while staffing, utilities, and maintenance escalated monthly expenses. Selling later proved difficult because buyers valued practicality over spectacle. The house wasn't lived in, it was performed. 14. The designer wardrobe explosion. A winner purchased hundreds of luxury clothing items in a short span, chasing status through labels rather than durability or need. Fashion cycles shifted quickly, leaving much of the wardrobe outdated before it was ever worn. Storage and resale yielded only fractions of original cost. They didn't buy style, they rented relevance briefly. 15. The personal museum project. Inspired by fame and preservation, a winner built a private museum to display personal memorabilia and purchases. Climate control, security, staffing, and maintenance turned the project into a full-scale institution without public revenue. The collection had little cultural value beyond the owner's attachment. They didn't preserve history, they curated themselves. By now, the pattern has shifted from novelty to narrative. These purchases weren't about use or function. They were about being seen, remembered, or admired. But objects built to signal identity demand constant upkeep once attention fades. And as the next set shows, when money chases excitement instead of purpose, even entertainment becomes an expensive responsibility. 16. the one-week luxury obsession. A lottery winner booked an extreme luxury experience. Private chefs, security, exclusive venues, compressed into a single week meant to feel rich immediately. The spending prioritized intensity over sustainability, leaving no structure or follow-up plan once the experience ended. When normal life resumed, the contrast amplified dissatisfaction rather than fulfillment. They didn't buy happiness, they rented stimulation. 17. The home recording studio fantasy. Inspired by fame culture, a winner built a professional-grade recording studio at home, despite having no background in music production. Specialized equipment required constant calibration, updates, and acoustic maintenance to remain usable. Usage dropped quickly while depreciation accelerated. They didn't buy creativity. They bought a dormant control room. 18. The private cinema that went dark. A winner constructed a custom private movie theater with cutting-edge projection and sound systems. Rapid changes in media formats and technology rendered the setup outdated faster than expected. Upgrades were costly, and the room sat unused as convenience shifted back to simple streaming. They didn't buy entertainment. They bought obsolescence. 19. The backyard sports arena. A lottery winner installed a full-scale sports facility on private property, complete with seating and lighting. Maintenance, safety compliance, and insurance quickly outweighed occasional use. What felt like endless fun became an underutilized infrastructure project. They didn't buy play, they built upkeep. 20. The extreme hobby collection. Driven by curiosity and excess, a winner invested heavily in multiple extreme hobbies at once: diving gear, racing equipment, specialized vehicles. Each hobby demanded training, certification, storage, and ongoing costs to remain safe and legal. Interest fragmented, leaving expensive equipment idle. They didn't buy experiences, they bought unfinished commitments. At this point, the mistake isn't extravagance, it's misunderstanding duration. Novelty fades quickly, but ownership doesn't. When excitement expires faster than responsibility, money transforms moments into maintenance. And as the next examples show, some purchases don't just lose value, they actively create new problems that money alone can't solve. 21. The contaminated land bargain. A lottery winner bought a large piece of land at what looked like a bargain price, attracted by size and isolation rather than history. What wasn't fully understood were prior industrial uses that left the soil contaminated and legally restricted. Environmental assessments, cleanup requirements, and regulatory oversight quickly turned ownership into a financial sinkhole. They didn't buy land, they inherited a lawsuit in waiting. 22. The abandoned development project. A winner invested heavily in a half-finished real estate development, believing additional capital alone would bring it to completion. Construction delays, zoning issues, and contractor disputes consumed funds without progress. The project stalled permanently, tying up capital in an asset that couldn't be sold or finished easily. Money entered confidently and got stuck structurally. 23. The business they didn't understand. Flushed with confidence, a lottery winner purchased an existing business outside their experience, assuming management could be delegated. Operational complexity, thin margins, and industry-specific risks surfaced immediately. Losses mounted faster than learning curves could catch up. They didn't buy income, they bought exposure. 24. The waterfront property nightmare. A winner acquired waterfront property imagining prestige and long-term appreciation. Flood risks, insurance costs, erosion, and rising regulatory standards changed the economics rapidly. Maintenance and compliance consumed resources far beyond initial expectations. The view stayed beautiful, the balance sheet did not. 25. The too big to walk away investment. A lottery winner continued funding a failing project simply because too much had already been spent to abandon it. Each additional dollar felt like protection of the original decision rather than escalation of loss. Eventually, the investment collapsed under its own weight. Commitment replaced judgment, and money followed loyalty into failure. By now, it's clear that some purchases don't just lose value, they actively generate new risks. Ownership introduces legal, environmental, and structural responsibilities that don't respond to enthusiasm or optimism. And in the next set, the mistakes become even quieter, because sometimes the dumbest spending doesn't look dramatic at all. It looks ordinary, routine, and impossible to reverse. 26. The maintenance-heavy vacation home. A lottery winner purchased a second home in a remote vacation destination, imagining occasional escapes and long-term appreciation. The location required constant upkeep, security, landscaping, repairs, utilities, and staff coordination, even when the property sat empty. Travel inconvenience reduced usage, while fixed costs never paused. They didn't buy a retreat. They bought a property that demanded attention year-round. 27. The over-engineered smart home. Eager to embrace technology, a winner installed an advanced smart home system controlling nearly every function of the house. Frequent updates, compatibility issues, and specialized technicians turned convenience into dependency. Simple failures required expensive service calls, and resale appeal declined due to complexity. Automation didn't simplify life, it locked it behind maintenance contracts. 28. The collection that required insurance. A lottery winner began collecting rare items, art, watches, or memorabilia, without considering the hidden costs of ownership. Insurance premiums, secure storage, climate control, and appraisal fees accumulated quietly over time. Liquidity remained low, while overhead remained constant. They didn't buy assets, they bought obligations that aged. 29. The staffed lifestyle trap. A winner built a lifestyle requiring full-time staff, from drivers to personal assistants, believing efficiency would improve quality of life. Employment contracts, turnover, legal compliance, and payroll complexity became ongoing management burdens. Privacy eroded while fixed costs solidified. Help arrived, but freedom left. 30. The subscription luxury overload. A lottery winner subscribed to multiple high-end services, clubs, memberships, concierge programs, assuming exclusivity justified expense. Each commitment felt manageable alone, but together they created relentless. At this stage, the spending isn't dramatic, it's structural. These purchases didn't collapse overnight. They leaked value steadily through maintenance, subscriptions, and obligations that felt too small to challenge individually. And in the final stretch, the dumbest spending decisions aren't about objects at all. They're about believing money can permanently simplify responsibility. 31. The image makeover obsession. After winning, a lottery recipient invested heavily in rebranding their entire public image through stylists, consultants, and constant cosmetic changes. The spending was driven by the belief that wealth required visual confirmation to feel real or respected. Costs multiplied as trends shifted and expectations escalated, while satisfaction remained temporary. They didn't buy confidence, they rented reassurance. 32. The buy respect strategy. A winner spent large sums on gifts, events, and favors to secure admiration and loyalty from others. The generosity attracted attention, but rarely genuine connection, creating expectations rather than relationships. As spending slowed, so did the interest. Money didn't earn respect, it leased it briefly. 33. The emotional real estate upgrade, driven by the desire to feel successful immediately. A lottery winner upgraded housing repeatedly in short succession. Each move was meant to signal progress rather than. 34. The status symbol arms race. A winner entered a cycle of acquiring increasingly visible status items to keep pace with perceived peers. Each purchase reset the baseline, making prior acquisitions feel insufficient. Spending escalated while satisfaction plateaued. Status proved to be a treadmill, not a destination. 35. The money solves everything assumption. Believing wealth could resolve underlying personal dissatisfaction, a lottery winner spent aggressively on experiences, possessions, and services. Temporary relief masked unresolved issues, encouraging further spending. Costs rose, while clarity didn't. Money amplified the problem. It didn't diagnose it. At this point, the mistake isn't in what was bought, but in why. These purchases were attempts to outsource identity, confidence, or meaning to objects and services. And as the final examples show, when money is asked to carry emotional weight, the bill never stops growing. 36. 37. The one-of-one luxury item with no market. A winner commissioned a completely unique luxury item, custom-built, personalized, and intentionally irreplaceable. While exclusivity felt valuable emotionally, it eliminated resale, appraisal, and insurance flexibility. When financial priorities shifted, the item became effectively unsellable. They didn't buy rarity, they bought isolation from the market. 38. The overseas property with endless restrictions. A lottery winner purchased property in a foreign country, attracted by lifestyle fantasy and perceived affordability. Local ownership laws, residency requirements, taxes, and usage restrictions quickly complicated the arrangement. Selling proved slow and costly due to regulatory friction and limited buyer pools. They didn't buy an escape, they bought permanent paperwork. 39. The experimental technology investment. 40. The property that couldn't be abandoned. A lottery winner acquired a large, isolated property, assuming abandonment was always an option if interest waned. Environmental laws, safety obligations, and local regulations made walking away illegal and costly. Even unused, the property demanded compliance and maintenance. They didn't buy land. They accepted a lifetime obligation. At this point, the pattern hardens. These purchases weren't just expensive mistakes, they were commitments with no exit. Once money crossed into ownership, enthusiasm stopped mattering. And in the final stretch, the dumbest spending decisions aren't about novelty or ego anymore. They're about permanence, buying something that refuses to let go. 41. The underground bunker fantasy. A lottery winner invested millions into building a private underground bunker, motivated by fear, control, and the desire for absolute self-sufficiency. The construction required specialized engineering, ventilation, permits, and constant environmental monitoring to remain safe. Maintenance costs continued indefinitely, while resale value was nearly non-existent due to niche demand and regulatory concerns. They didn't buy safety, they bought isolation with a maintenance schedule. 42. The personal zoo that outgrew control. A winner expanded an exotic animal hobby into a full, private zoo, believing money could compensate for complexity. Animal welfare laws, inspections, staffing, and public scrutiny escalated faster than infrastructure could adapt. Authorities eventually intervened, forcing relocation and costly compliance measures. They didn't buy wonder, they built an unsustainable responsibility. 43. The custom vehicle no one could service. A lottery winner commissioned a fully custom vehicle with unique parts and experimental design. Once completed, no standard mechanic could legally or safely service it. Repairs became impossible without original builders, who were no longer available. They didn't buy mobility, they bought permanence in breakdown. 44. The mega home in the wrong location. A winner built an enormous luxury home in an area with limited demand, assuming size alone guaranteed value. Local infrastructure, services, and buyer interest never aligned with the property's scale. Selling became nearly impossible without massive losses. They didn't buy real estate, they bought immobility. 45. The forever project that never finished. A lottery winner funded a massive personal project with no clear completion criteria. As tastes changed, revisions multiplied, and timelines stretched indefinitely. Costs ballooned without delivering closure or satisfaction. They didn't buy creation, they bought perpetual revision. 46. The brand they didn't understand. A winner purchased a well-known brand franchise without understanding brand management or contractual obligations. Royalties, compliance requirements, and reputational risks surfaced immediately. Exit clauses were restrictive and costly. They didn't buy a business, they bought rules they didn't write. 47. The private airline dream. A lottery winner attempted to run a small private airline for personal use and prestige. Regulatory compliance, staffing, safety audits, and insurance overwhelmed operations. Losses mounted rapidly with no practical path to shutdown without penalties. They didn't buy freedom, they bought aviation law. 48. The estate that required a staffed office. A winner purchased an estate so complex it required full-time administrative oversight. Payroll, legal compliance, and coordination became a separate organization. Ownership turned into management without vacation. They didn't buy space, they bought governance. 49. The collection no one could inherit. A lottery winner amassed a highly specialized collection that required expert handling and context. Future heirs lacked interest or capability to maintain it. Liquidation proved difficult and undervalued. They didn't buy legacy, they bought liquidation risk. 50. The purchase that couldn't be undone. A final winner spent money on an asset that legally, structurally, and financially couldn't be reversed. No resale market, no abandonment option, and no exit strategy existed. Ownership locked them into permanent obligation. They didn't waste money by spending it, they wasted it by committing it forever. And that completes the list. 50 purchases that looked exciting at checkout and punishing afterward. The common thread wasn't extravagance, it was misunderstanding ownership. Because money doesn't just buy things, it buys responsibility, duration, and consequences that don't disappear when enthusiasm does. Looking back at all 50 purchases, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. None of these mistakes happened because lottery winners were careless with money in the moment. They happened because spending felt like an ending, when in reality, it was only the beginning. The purchase price created the illusion of completion, while ownership quietly introduced duration, obligation, and responsibility that no one fully calculated up front. What connects private islands, custom mansions, rare vehicles, personal zoos, and novelty projects isn't extravagance, it's permanence. These objects didn't lose value because they were luxurious. They lost value because they demanded attention long after excitement expired. Maintenance replaced enjoyment. Regulation replaced freedom. And novelty faded much faster than responsibility ever could. Another recurring theme is purpose. Many of these purchases didn't have a clear job beyond signaling success, satisfying curiosity, or filling emotional gaps created by sudden change. Without a role to justify their existence, the objects still required care, money, and decisions. Ownership became a background task that never turned off, slowly draining resources without delivering corresponding value. Perhaps the most revealing detail is how rarely these purchases could be undone. Selling was difficult. Abandonment was illegal. Walking away was expensive. Once money crossed into ownership, flexibility vanished. What felt like freedom at checkout hardened into structure afterward. These stories aren't about mocking wealth or warning against ambition. They're about misunderstanding scale. When money arrives faster than judgment, decisions compress. And when ownership outlives intention, spending stops being a choice and starts becoming a commitment. The lesson hiding here isn't don't buy things. It's this. Ownership is always more expensive than purchase, and it charges you over time. The uncomfortable truth behind all these purchases is that none of them were irrational in the moment. Each decision made sense when viewed through the lens of sudden abundance. Money arrived, limits disappeared, and buying felt like control. But what these stories quietly reveal is that control doesn't come from purchasing power. It comes from understanding what happens after ownership begins. Lottery winners don't lose money because they spend it. They lose it because spending creates systems. A house creates maintenance. A vehicle creates regulation. A collection creates insurance. A business creates obligations. And the larger the purchase, the more invisible systems attach themselves to it. These systems don't care about intention, excitement, or confidence. They operate continuously, whether you're enjoying the purchase or not. What makes sudden wealth especially dangerous isn't excess, it's speed. Decisions that normally unfold over years are compressed into months or weeks. Experience doesn't have time to accumulate. Mistakes don't announce themselves loudly. They settle in quietly as monthly costs, legal requirements, and responsibilities that feel too small to challenge individually. By the time awareness arrives, the structure is already built. There's also a deeper illusion at work, the belief that ownership equals freedom. In reality, ownership is a contract with the future. It demands consistency long after desire fades. And when an object has no purpose beyond novelty or identity, it still insists on care, money, and attention. Luxury without direction doesn't simplify life, it complicates it. These stories aren't warnings against wealth. They're warnings against misunderstanding scale. Money doesn't remove responsibility, it multiplies it. It doesn't eliminate friction, it relocates it. And when people assume they can always exit later, they discover that many exits don't exist at all. Perhaps the most important lesson here is that value isn't created at the moment of purchase. It's created or destroyed over time. Ownership rewards patience, clarity, and restraint far more than enthusiasm. Without those, even the most exciting acquisitions become quiet liabilities. This has been The Absurdist Files, where money doesn't ruin lives by itself, ownership outlives intention, and the most expensive part of buying something is realizing too late that it never planned to let you go.